From the studios of Foxboro Cable Access, located in the center of Foxboro, Massachusetts, you are watching Around Foxboro.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Around Foxboro. My name is Jared Craig. I'll be your host today, and I have with me Paige Duncan, who is our wonderful planning director at the town of Foxboro. And Paige is here today to talk a little bit about housing in Foxboro. We're going to talk quite a bit about the housing needs, some of the housing issues that you may or may not be aware of in the town, and we've got a few action items for you at home as well. So. Paige, thanks so much for coming today. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what your job is as planning director and maybe how that relates to housing in Foxboro a little bit.
Sure. Thank you, Jared. Thanks for having me today. So as you said, Paige Duncan, I'm the planning director here in Foxboro. I work primarily with the planning board in the planning office. We have a staff of a half-time staff planner as well as a shared secretary with the conservation and planning and zoning departments. So my role is basically to oversee planning for the town. This involves everything from what we're going to be talking about today, which is housing. We've also been spending a lot of time on economic development. You know, the Route 1 zoning that was passed a couple years ago, that was our effort. I work closely with the Economic Development Committee. We've been working closely with uptown businesses, trying to get the uptown reinvigorated through the 2013 master plan, well, downtown strategy, which was part of the master plan.
It's coming, right?
It's coming, yes.
I feel like there's been quite a bit of change, but
there has. We have a lot in the works, and unfortunately with the COVID, it's kind of put in a kink in that, but we did have some exciting projects uptown, and we were really starting to feel that we were going to see some people living, working, and playing uptown. And in that downtown strategy, I was going to say is that was one of the number one concerns for the residents of Foxboro was the uptown and keeping it vibrant, keeping it the heart of the community. So that's been a big part of my job. But right now, for the past year or so, as you can attest, because we've been working closely together, we've been focused heavily on housing. And we're going to get into a conversation here, but a lot of folks probably say, wah, wah. You know, it's kind of a boring subject. I know if you have housing, why would you think about it? But believe it or not, in Foxboro, there's a lot of people that have housing concerns. They want to stay in town. They either can't get into town, they can't afford to remain in town. They might need a different housing situation. And one thing the suburbs is not strong in is variety of housing choices. So I think we'll probably get into that a bit today. But basically, we handle all things in the planning department, all things sort of development. You know, if you get a new subdivision or a new neighborhood being built, we'll review that. A new commercial development, we'll review that. So we kind of get to see all the fun stuff that comes into town. And through our master plan and now through a housing production plan, those serve as the roadmaps. And why it matters to a resident like you is that I'm a town employee. I'll be honest, I don't live in town. So it is super important that the residents lay out this map. So that I can follow it. Like when I came to town in 2015, there was a master plan. It provided a great resource for me to understand what mattered to the community. And same with this housing production plan. I'm hoping that this will, as the residents get engaged through this video and others, that they'll start to understand why this matters to them, even if they have a home, how it matters to their community character.
So can I just reflect what I think you just said is that you basically get these plans that have been put together by community input from the town, and you say this is my job is to make this vision a reality for the town.
Exactly.
We said we wanted some uptown development, and it's your job as the planning director to start planning for this uptown development. Is that correct?
Correct.
So with housing, you're doing the same thing with that, but we're also creating a new housing plan together, right? So how does that fit into your purview, and how are you hoping the town will be able to get their input into this?
So, well, a housing production plan is actually a state mandated document. So we're required to do one every 5 years. The purpose being, and unless you haven't been paying attention, we all know that in Massachusetts there is a housing crisis. Obviously with the cost of land, the desirability to live here, it's become very difficult to afford a home or any rent, own, whatever form of ownership to have housing.
As far as I know, that's a national problem, but we're feeling it here as well. Yeah,
it is national. I think in your New England areas, you'll see it a little more just because of the density and we have great educations, we have great jobs around here, so it's a highly desirable place to live. Other parts of the country too, but we're biased towards here.
Absolutely.
So we're required to look at housing and then also figure out what the needs are, and that's what we've been doing with you being on the working group, we've been sort of identifying where housing stands today in Foxborough, what the residents' needs are versus what the supply is. And so that's kind of where we are. We've identified some needs. Okay. And we're now, and you asked my role. My role is, as we start to develop strategies, we want to get the community to buy in. I wouldn't want to propose something that the community said, oh, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. So we kind of work together. Professional staff will make some recommendations, and then the citizens will get to give input on that. And if we see some excitement around a certain thing, we're going to obviously promote more than that something is not desired by the community. So that's why it's so important for the residents to get involved, because these will guide me and our department as we develop future zoning regulations or other regulations that could be adopted by the town. And we want to make sure the residents are comfortable with that and that they understand it.
Yeah, definitely. And how do we get involved? I know I'm involved, so I'm sort of asking this rhetorically, but how would someone at home get involved if they want to?
Sure. Well, one way, and don't everybody flood my email, but go ahead, you can, is you could email me, pduncan@foxboroma.gov. I'll find a place for you. How I got probably your name and others was we had done a survey back, I think it was over a year ago now, and in the bottom of it I said, hey, would you be willing to give me your email address and let me contact you on future housing issues? And 291 people did say yes. And so that has been an amazing resource for me to be able to reach out to some residents. And not everybody appreciates it, and not everybody gets involved, but it's okay. I'm able to inform those 291 people. So if others want to send me email addresses and let me know they're interested, I'll put them on any future mailings. It's not a formal thing. I'm not a spammer.
Right.
If anything, it's more, hey, we're going to be having a conversation on housing. Join us at 6 p.m. next Thursday night, and then it'll be a group of us getting together to talk about it.
So I guess a piece I'm missing, so it would be great to have community input, but if I live in Foxborough, I like the town as is, why do I want it to make it attractive for people who don't live here already? Why do I want people to move in, or do I want people to move in? Can you talk a little bit about how maybe each of those scenarios affects me as a citizen?
Absolutely. So this is why it is important, because, well, one of the things I will say, as we've heard loud and clear, is, and I shouldn't say heard it, because it hasn't been a real strong point, but looking at the numbers, the population numbers, Foxborough hasn't grown dramatically. And talking to folks, that's, I believe, a deliberate attempt. Foxborough doesn't want to grow. You look at a Mansfield, or I live in Franklin, clearly they've had a different approach.
Yeah.
I respect that. Foxborough's been around 16 or 17,000 people. That's great. That seems to be the comfortable spot. So why would we want to attract people in? Well, what we're seeing is that there are already folks that are here that can't stay here much longer.
Sure.
Or we have a lot of seniors who live in town in a big house. They'd love to downsize, but where do they go? We have a lot of kids that've grown up here. They'd love to move into Foxborough, but they can't. So this is where this plan matters, is that Foxborough is in a very good position right now where you, the community, the residents, get to decide how to respond to this housing need. Foxborough has met the 40B requirement. I'm sure people have heard that word, 40B. The town is over 10% of its affordable housing. So you probably say, well, why are we bothering? Well, a lot of those, 500 of those affordable housing units are in the 2 apartment complexes that were recently, in the past 10 years or so, approved over by Foxborough Boulevard and Fisher Street. Those aren't necessarily affordable housing. I mean, they check a box and they meet a need on the state level, but from a community level, they're not necessarily where folks want to end up. And they're good for certain people, but not for everybody. And there's nothing wrong with them. It's just not necessarily meeting that niche.
I've heard you say before that there's a difference between affordability as defined by the state, saying what is affordable, and what's actually affordable to real life human beings like you and I.
Exactly.
I can't necessarily afford to live in that, and that might be technically affordable, but there's a difference between practically affordable and technically affordable.
True,
right?
true.
Okay.
Yes. There's we call it the capital A affordable, and that's when it's actually deed restricted, actual affordable housing. And then there's the more naturally occurring, where it might be because of a size of a unit is smaller or whatever, that it stays by market. The lowercase a.
Yeah.
And one thing we see and one unique thing, and it's getting too much into the weeds about it, but when you have an apartment development like we see at the Lodge and the Domain, all of those units count. So only 25% are affordable, but 100% are on the inventory. So that's where it is. So 25% of those units are affordable in theory. And yet it's telling us that we have over 500 units on our inventory, and we don't. So that's the hard thing. We want to find a way to provide some true housing for residents of this community while not changing the fabric of the community, not growing it dramatically, not trying to attract, we're not seeking to attract everybody from outside. That said, our doors aren't closed either, from what I could tell. It's more just choices. That's what, I think you've probably heard that the conversation has evolved into, there's just not a lot of choice.
Right.
There's big single family homes, and there's older small houses that need a lot of work, which can be overwhelming to a lot of people. And then there's apartments. And how do you find that sort of missing middle, as we call it in the planning world, of where do you go if you can afford a $300,000 or $400,000 house?
Yeah.
You don't go anywhere nowadays.
There's not a good place for that, at least in this town.
Yeah.
And so I guess my question is, and forgive me if it's an inappropriate question, but why do we need to seek out that middle? How does it benefit me as a citizen to have that middle available when I'm already set? And I like the town as is, and maybe I don't want to see it grow. I like the size of my children's class. My children's class sizes is right around 1920. I like that.
Yep.
Do I want more people in my town?
Well, again, I don't think the goal here is to get more people, and I want to make that very clear. We're not looking to grow the town of Foxborough. What we're trying to do is meet the needs of the residents.
Great.
And so the existing residents have expressed concern about the housing supply. So we aren't necessarily looking to grow classrooms or expand anything, but what we're trying to do is look at what we have and see if there's a way within the confines of the Foxborough character to grow. And we have a few strategies, we're going to jump into them, but things like accessory dwelling units or cottage housing. Again, not massive apartment buildings, not major developments, but maybe things that can be sort of blended into the fabric of the community and creating a little different supply of housing for those that don't necessarily want your big single family home, your $500,000 duplex, your apartment, it's really quite limited.
And those accessory dwellings are also in-law apartments? Or
yes, that's another term.
Are we going to be changing that term? Or I know there are a couple of plans or proposals out there around that. Do you want to talk about those now, or do we need to?
No, so I think we're having a great conversation and forget our outline and kind of stick with what we've got, because I think we're getting to the meat of it.
Right.
So yes, I just lost my train of thought though.
Oh, the accessory dwelling
Sorry about that.
proposals.
We the house, so there's been two different there's been one effort around housing, and it's been confusing because there's actually a housing working group. You're on that. There's 9 members of this housing working group. You guys have sort of been working with the consultant, MAPC, and me to work on the actual housing production plan.
Which the state has given us funds to create.
Yes, true.
Correct?
We got a grant for that. So yes, so that's been great. Alongside that, it's been and it's been a first time for us and for CHAPA. CHAPA is a citizens housing planning group in the state, and they've been working with us on an advocacy level. We probably would have been better off waiting to engage them until we were a little further along in the process, because I think that's confused some folks, because that's more of an action-oriented group, and the coalition is.
Sure.
But anyway, this housing coalition has been meeting monthly. We meet on the first Thursday of the month, I believe it, although this month in July, it's going to be July 16th, 6 p.m. Email me if you want a link. And what this is a group to sort of talk about housing issues. Folks at the 2 meetings ago got a little, I want to say, frustrated, saying, hey, let's do something. And you were at that meeting, I think, and they said, why don't we look at these accessory dwelling units, or in-law apartments as they are. Right now, Foxborough allows these in-law apartments, but only under certain circumstances. The discussion has been whether to sort of loosen those regulations up a bit. Right now, on an accessory dwelling unit, it has to be attached to the family home. It can't be a standalone unit. It can't be more than 850 square feet, which is somewhat small, and you have to have a related person living in it.
Yep.
So that's fine. And we've had a few of them. We get a couple a year, and it's definitely great for some people. What we've been talking about at the Housing Coalition is whether, if we opened this up to non-related individuals, whether that would create the lowercase affordable, the naturally occurring affordable apartments that suddenly would become available. Now that fills some people with fear.
Sure.
Because what if we end up with, some really bad party animal living next to me? Well, a few things I don't think that would happen is, one, your homeowner has to live in the adjacent property that's attached. So if you added on an in-law apartment, you would share a wall with that party tenant.
So I'd be very protective of my space.
Exactly.
I wouldn't necessarily want a hooligan, whatever that means, moving in. Yeah.
So we believe that fear, while everybody kind of goes to that fear, it's probably not a true fear. By allowing a non-related person to live in that apartment, it also might increase the value of your property, in the sense of right now a bank isn't necessarily going to give you a home equity loan to do it. Well, they might, but they wouldn't give you a loan for that particular purpose, because once your relative moves on or passes away, you don't have a viable thing, and in fact you have to remove the kitchen. Right. If you had a standalone, I had an apartment you could rent to someone else, then that's actually an asset. And that's, I think our gentleman at our panel discussion that is on the web, by the way, if you'd like to see it, panel discussion on small houses, Jeremy Lake, he called it a side hustle. Yeah. And it's a way that if someone had a little space, they could carve out an in-law apartment. You might get a couple, $800 a month or whatever. I don't even know what rent is. It's probably much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, if I have a little square footage in my house, we're talking about large single-family houses. Yep. There's a nice way to make it a little bit more affordable for me to be able to live there by having a little income on the side. Yeah.
Exactly.
So we're really talking about in this planning group, looking at the big picture and how all of these decisions are going to affect the town, and try to. I feel like it's my job to try to weed out the ones or ask questions around the ones that I'm not so sure are a good idea, and really make it clear for the people of the town that we're doing what we think is best for Foxborough.
Right, you guys are
forward.
vetting this sort of,
It feels a little bit like we're vetting it. Yeah.
And so you should. You're the representatives of the community. I mean, we're the consultants per se.
Right.
We're not living here, so it's important that residents have a strong voice.
And speaking of that voice, we also do have a survey coming out soon, correct?
Right. Well, it's not a survey. It's a community forum. So no, that's okay. But it is kind of a survey, because I just went through it this morning, and there are questions at the end. It's kind of neat. So in the old days, pre-COVID, what we would be doing is in June we would have had a night where we'd ask you to come to town hall. We'd put on the whole presentation. It'd be pretty much consultants talking at you the way it always goes, and that's the way it goes. Because of COVID, we've had to adapt a little bit, and I actually like it. So what our consultants have done is 4 little video clips of our strategies, basically with pictures and a description of what we're proposing. And then at the end, the residents would get a chance to sort of vote on what they think they like and provide input. So we're going to be providing that website. The open house forum is going to be launched this week. It's very exciting. It's going to be open for a couple weeks. We do realize it's July 4th. Not the best time. COVID's really messed up a lot. Hopefully most people are not going away. But we will keep it open for a few weeks. And we're also assuming that folks will not sit down in one felt swoop and go through it. It's meant to be done almost in modules. And if you keep your cookies activated, apparently if you walk away and come back, it'll pick up right where you left off. So it's meant to be user-friendly and sort of our current times friendly.
Yeah, and how do we find that? We could put it up on our screen for you, maybe?
Yes, if we could get that up on screen, that would be great. We're also going to be having it on the town's website, the front page. I'm working on press releases. I'm working with the Foxborough Reporter. So we really are going to try to get the word out far and wide, and we're hoping for hundreds and hundreds of responses.
Could you tease us with maybe one of the projects that you're excited about?
Sure. Well, I think the cottage housing. So I mentioned the accessory dwelling unit / in-law. We might be coming forward with something in the fall for that, and we look forward to that discussion. That's not as exciting, but it is something that might help. The one that really is neat is the cottage housing idea.
I just want to say, I think people my age are really considering. My sister's about to buy a house with an in-law apartment for my parents to live. So I think it is something that is, impacting people my age, so well, don't wash over it.
You could do that today with your parents. I think the exciting part is whether we're going to open it up to non-relatives.
Right.
And again, and rest assured, the planning board, who's the group that sort of sponsors these things, they had a million questions for us, and they're not saying absolutely. They have concerns. They're like, folks have moved into town, a single-family district. They expect single-family housing, and I get that. And that's where this is not meant to become duplex situation or two-family. It's meant to be a true subsidiary use. put that aside. Another exciting one is the cottage style housing. And this would be something where you actually have houses, Medway is actually developing a bylaw right now, and Foxborough has been participating in hopes that when they get theirs further along, we're just going to copy theirs.
Great.
But we've been involved heavily with their group. We have about 4 communities working together on this, getting them launched first, but then hopefully Foxborough, we tailor it to Foxborough's needs. But it's basically allowing smaller homes with smaller setbacks, but they're designed around a community green. So it's really a true community, and it's meant to be where you walk. Your parking might not be right out your door. You might have one space out your door, but you might have to walk down a path over to another area with shared parking. And it's meant to be a community. It's meant to be small houses. I think the max we have, at least on the draft that we're looking at now, is, I don't know if it's 12 or 1,500. We're really trying to keep these small.
Yeah.
You may or may not be allowed to have one garage. It's truly getting to that smaller style housing development. And I don't exactly know where it would go. I mean, obviously, that's the hard thing, is like planners can write regulations till they're blue in their face, and we think they're pretty fabulous. Yeah. And then the market gets a hold of them, and they laugh us out the door when they tell us how infeasible it is financially for X, Y, and Z. So we're really trying to find a proposal that would be viable, but would also be a benefit to the community, and that's the sweet spot there.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. And actually, we should probably talk a little bit about these graphics, if we could put them up on the screen, because it does talk about what our town looks like right now in terms of affordability and stock, right?
Sure. So, I think what did you say, Jared? You said that here we go. A household earning. Foxborough's median income could afford a home costing $345,000 right now. So what that means, because you don't know this, but the average cost of a house right now in Foxborough is $456,000. So what that says is your average household income could not afford your average house in Foxborough today.
That's unbelievable.
So, and that's just today. We have some other pretty compelling numbers that I think this is more on a demographic side, but 34% of households in Foxborough right now are low income. You'd never, looking around Foxborough, you'd never know it. 5% of elderly households are low income.
So if they're low income, are they in danger of losing their housing right now? Are we assuming they're paycheck to paycheck, and because of COVID, if they miss a mortgage payment here or there, they could be out on the streets. So this is something that maybe to the average person doesn't affect them directly, but it could affect your neighbor. It could affect my daughter's friend, my son's friend, in a way that we might not know on the outside.
Exactly.
But there are 1 in 3 people in this town.
Yeah.
And that's a shocking number to me.
It's pretty compelling. It is. So, and the other compelling number, shall I say, is that Foxborough's senior population is expected to increase by 38% by 2030. Now, and from being through all these meetings, the senior population is quite vocal in this effort. They need options. Right now they're in their large single-family homes. They want to downsize, but they don't want to lose their community. Right. A lot of them are moving to Mansfield, I think the Willows, or someplace else, and those are the folks that can afford that. That's but then they have to leave their whole community. Right. So we're trying to see if there's anything we can do without changing the whole fabric of Foxborough to accommodate some of these needs. And we actually find that a young couple or a young individual starting out and a senior, with the empty nester, they're almost similar housing.
They're looking for the same kind of house. Yeah,
so we're not necessarily looking for all senior housing or all this housing. It's really more of a not as big housing.
Yeah,
nowadays with
maybe a guest room so that they can have the grandkids, or if they're a younger couple, have parents stay over.
Have an office or whatever. Exactly.
Yeah, maybe start a family. Yeah. So this is I think getting to the meat and bones of what I'm interested in, is that these are issues that affect people's everyday lives.
Yes.
And we're at a point now where we're looking at the numbers and they don't quite match up. The average person can't afford the average house in this town.
Yep.
I feel like as a citizen who's aware of that fact, I need to get my voice heard, and I need to try to make a difference. And so the easiest way we can make a difference is joining this online forum, emailing you. Yep. What else can we do?
So definitely this forum. We'll get the website listed. Great. If you can't grab it off of the TV, then go right onto the Town of Foxborough website. It'll be right on the front page once it's on the front page,
right.
But it will be, I promise. So that's a very important one. Then come fall, there'll be a sort of, this is not the last chance to provide input. We're going to be educating the residents on the strategies we're proposing and the locations we're proposing during this forum that we're advertising today. And then in the fall, it will be regrouping about that. So this isn't the last, this isn't the be-all, end-all.
Right.
The working group will continue to work through these, the input given. But then also, as I mentioned, we have the Housing Coalition. So this is the plan we're doing. This coalition can continue on forever if they want to.
Sure.
It's really a community grassroots group. Like I said, we meet the first Thursday of the month. It's on Zoom at 6 p.m. That said, this month in July, because of the July 4th holiday, we bumped it up to July 16th. So if anybody...
Are those on the town calendar? How do we find out about those? Just by emailing you?
Probably emailing me, because
Okay.
they're not an official town meeting, so they don't necessarily go into the town calendar.
Okay.
Right now, they're all being done through Zoom, so grab your dinner, get in front of your
I've done that.
Yeah, exactly. We've all done it. We sit and eat our dinner and we talk, and it's just interesting to sort of discuss housing issues. And sometimes we don't even get that far, but other times we're digging into like the accessory dwelling units and whatnot. And as these strategies get publicized, the coalition will get more active, because that'll be the group that sort of pounds the pavement and tries to get people involved, because we know that it is hard to get people engaged, and it's important that they do now, so they're not later frustrated when something passes that they don't necessarily understand.
Right, right. And I feel like you've given me and us so much information today, and we've just barely scratched the surface. So I would love, we're just about out of time. I'd love if there's any one thing that we didn't mention that you want to make sure we get in there. I want to give you an opportunity to have that, but I want people to be excited about this too, because it gets my juices flowing in a new way to think that we're not trying to change the town, we're not trying to change the size or the scope of the town or the character of the town, but we're really trying to make sure that the people who are here now have opportunity and are not stuck, are not fearing that missed mortgage payment, that if they might have an opportunity to downsize, but we have a community, we want to build that and strengthen that community.
Absolutely.
And housing is an easy touchstone, quick fire way to do that.
It is, and easy to talk about.
Easy to talk
hard
about.
to do.
Easy for me to talk about because that's all I need to do. Right.
But no, you're right, and it affects all of us. And it's one of those things you don't think of. Like I don't think of my house until I don't have one, or there's a problem. And
Sure.
I think that's probably the same for most of us. And I'm sure COVID has brought to light, unfortunately, a lot of this even more for many. So. We're all in this together, and I think the residents of Foxborough, really, I've been in many communities, and the Foxborough community is special. The way they rally, you just feel the heart of this community. So I believe that folks, once they understand that, again, this isn't a radical movement, there's no major change trying to be promoted.
Right.
This is truly, how can we meet the current needs without changing too much, and
Right.
I think that's sort of where we are.
And sounds like you're anticipating future needs as well.
Yeah.
Because you're the planning director.
Yeah, that's what we do. We try to look ahead, exactly.
Well, thanks so much, Paige. We're just about out of time.
All right, well, thank you, Jared.
So thank you so much. I want to thank Paige Duncan for being here today from our town offices. I want to thank Paul Beck and Mike Weber from FCA TV, as well as Jerry Love, our producer, and Joshua Lovering, our editor, and Lauren Batard. Thank you so much. Have a good day.